Hey everyone, David Ferla here. So the graphic novel that I've chosen to go with this week is Marble Season, and it was created and everything was designed and produced by Gilbert Hernandez. The publisher was Drawn and Quarterly, and the length of the graphic novel was 132 pages. In the sense of whether it's a genuine graphic novel or a compilation, I feel it is a true graphic novel. There are multiple issues trying to be compiled into one and passed off as a novel. It's a continuous story being told. In terms of when the acts occur, I felt that Act 1 ended on page 13. Let me see if I can get this to show here. Got the light showing up here. I probably can't because it's a comic, but so basically the reason why I thought that it ended on that page on page 13. It actually began on, 12, and it acted on page 14 for page 2. Act 2. Let me try that again. I felt that Act 1 ended on page 11. And, uh, excuse me. Again, I can't even read my own paper. Act 1 ended on page 12, and Act 2 began on page 13. This was due to the first few pages being more of a strong focus on Huey, who's the main character, and his marble playing and his interaction with somebody else. And then it transitions into introducing more characters as a whole. And then Act 2 ends when Huey says he's going to start a new life. And then on page 112 is when he actually begins the process of sort of wrapping up the story and it coming to a conclusion. So, in regards to that, the story is about Huey. He's the middle child of three boys, and for the goal, he's looking for ways to stay entertained each day by engaging in various activities with random friends and his brothers. He has an older brother and a younger brother, both various in age. Older brother is a teenager, and his younger brother is very much like a toddler, early like late toddler ages. Like I'd probably say like 4, 5, 6. Um, he attempts to put on plays. He has a Captain America shield that his brother fashioned out of a frisbee for him, and he plays with his GI Joe doll, which he holds very dear. Um, as far as does the conflict in Act Two support their goal? Almost every part of the story features him, unless there's a brief detour of other characters being told. And I think that's the thing is it's not really a conflict, so it's more so just him going from moment to moment, and those moments are briefly resolved. They don't really have a complete and strong resolution to them. Which takes me to does the story have a solid story arc? If pressed, I didn't feel like it has a true definitive story arc. There's little moments being told throughout the comic, but there's nothing really that jumped out to me except it's just a young boy trying to enjoy his free time. Um, there wasn't really a solid resolution either. I mean, the story wraps up, but it's more of an abrupt end. Um, However, there wasn't really a focal point of conflict, like I mentioned previously, that I could really pinpoint that would have required a more substantial conclusion at the end. Uh, in regards to a character arc, I was a little torn at this after the first time I read it, but I went back and thought about it, and I thought Huey's all about the fun and the games in the first two acts. He's just being a young boy, and then but in Act 3, he sort of brought down to reality. His mom gets rid of prized possessions. He seems to lose sort of a flair that he had about him, that creative youngness to him, and he starts to hit it off with Patty too, which could be a sign of things to come with him not even knowing it. There's a maturity. They share a love of movies, and that's where you see him start to transition from just like an innocent kid to someone who may be interested in things other than comics and cards. In regards to establishing and having effective transitions, and would the readers know where those are? Transitions are actually kept pretty minimal. There's no more than 6 panels on a page, and a scene always ends on the sixth panel in the lower right hand corner. It makes transitioning from event to event easy to follow as they're not bringing up a new moment and inputting it right at the end. It ends for the scene specifically and then transitions into the next scene on the very next page. Based on McLeod's ideas of transition, I felt that from what I saw, it felt like a subject to subject transition was being used in this comic. The story goes from scene to scene on each page, so each panel is a transition to a new person or an item to continue the moment until it's actually resolved. Uh, As far as making use of the page as a mini comic idea, I think it really does use it effectively. Each page is pretty simple. There aren't a ton of different size panels. Each one is the same size, so it's very formulaic. And it would be easy to take them and make moments that happen into mini comics of their own. The flow doesn't speak to any like time limits. It just goes day to day, so it could stand on its own from scene to scene. In terms of effective use of directional flow, does the movement of art combined with the layout and text pull the reader through? I thought it was good. It goes from left to right, top to bottom, like you're reading a book and not a comic. So it was a different approach, in my opinion. It wasn't like you had to follow the dialogue bubbles or anything specifically. It just had a really great flow. It's not overly complicated. There's not too much on the page. It's a simple read, which made it continuing on for me relatively easy. I didn't realize how far it was actually in the comic until I looked down and it was halfway through. Um, I would recommend this to my classmates only because I don't know what everyone's preference is. So this story may intrigue some folks, like other comics have in this class. In regards to my friends or my family, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to family or friends, and only because most of mine can't be bothered by to read anything else comic related that isn't DC or Marvel or the funnies in a newspaper. So they're kind of limited on what their likes are. It's not to say that it's not a good read. I really enjoyed it. So I think anybody could potentially, but I wouldn't go out of my way to be like, hey, you have to read this. But from a classmate standpoint, I think because we've taken a new approach with everything, I think you guys would have a really great appreciation for the story. Uh, as far as any other observations I took away regarding this, I thought the biggest one was I took away is how the simple art and the story were, and how you don't have to use bright colors and a lot of jump off the page at you style approaches of storytelling to make a good comic or a graphic novel. At the center of it all, you just need a good story that someone can get into and want to finish, and that's what I felt the entire way through. Like I'm like, okay, where's Huey going with this? Like, what's going to be the end goal here? And like I said, it wasn't a big final resolution; it just kind of abruptly ends, but you're not left angry with the ending, but you are left a little unsatisfied because you want more of a conclusion, but it just wasn't there for the story. But the whole story up until the end was a really good read. And the fun fact that I took away from this is that there's not one single adult scene in this entire comic book. It's all teenagers and young kids. It very much has the Peanuts approach, where you can hear or there's a mention of an adult that's not in the panel, and because of that, like it just sticks to the youngness of the comic. You don't have to worry about adults and like having to introduce adult figures in this. It's just kids. It's just teenagers, very young characters, and I thought that was really cool. It was very much a throwback to the Peanuts style of comic writing, where you don't see anybody. The teacher, then want. That's what you get with this. There's no interference from an adult. So that is my review on the book. Hopefully somebody will eventually give this a try. I found it on scribd.com, so enjoy.